G'day listeners and welcome back to another episode of the Keeper League podcast. We're the AFL Fantasy podcast that doesn't talk about the superstars. We only talk about the lesser knowns and the players who are going to bring value to your draft and Keeper League teams. My name's Hef and this week I am joined by the Commissioner of the DT Shiva Competition, Damon Adams. How you going?
Doing well, mate. I'm surprised you've got me back given that you came runner-up in the song contest. Would have broken. I mean, it was a ballad. You poured your heart into that song, and felt
really did.
just short. The people got around you.
They did,
just not enough.
Yeah, I know. It was a bit of a. I don't know. Like, to be honest, looking back, and I said this on the podcast myself. I think Sieg's song was better anyway. Like, I wholeheartedly think that the funniest song should win.
Yeah,
and his was the funniest one.
Over the history of the competition, it's ebbed and flowed. Either side of that coin,
yeah.
Like with the strong emotional to just the shit taking,
yeah.
And that's what Siegs when he's a listener to this podcast, so we'll be stoked to hear you hurting a little bit. But if anyone hasn't checked out Hef's song, it is well worth it. When Lloyd is over, if you search DT Shiva and go into the song contest, it came second overall. Brilliant stuff.
I think we did put it at the end of like one of the weekly episodes.
Oh,
here.
great.
So yeah, we put it on the end just to kind of. I think it was the week of the final. We put it on there. So yeah, didn't give me enough votes, obviously, but very happy with the outcome of the competition and just being like my first DT Shiva song contest.
Yeah.
It was a good experience. I think for any of our listeners that haven't actually listened to the DT Shiva podcast before, I know if you're not a member of the DT Shiva, it might not, be your thing straight up. But like, if you want to hear just like a bunch of, what was it, about 20 odd blokes just making songs, some great singing in there, some terrible singing in there, some funny concepts, some great ideas, some great parodies, that sort of stuff as well. It was hilarious, just a couple weeks and just a very funny hour per podcast that you put out, just listening to all the songs and you guys commentating on them. It was kind of like Eurovision, chatting about it type thing. It's good fun.
I mean, that's it. Like, so the Shiva Blast is the podcast for the Shiva community. The community itself has 780 people in it, so it's for that. It's a niche podcast.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily do fantasy player reviews, but we look at the statistics and the goings on within our walls. So, we're kind of coming to the end of the year now. We got finals, as most leagues do, in about 3 weeks' time.
Which I'm looking to make nowadays.
Oy.
I think I just jumped into the top 6 this week. I think. Actually, it took 15 years for the AFL Fantasy website to...
It's been a weekend for the boffins behind that.
Yeah.
We've got our knockout competition, which is now in our semi-finals. So 780 coaches are down to 4. It's all happening there. So if you're interested in getting involved next year, it's going to be our biggest year ever again. Just make sure you're following us on Facebook, DT Shiva, or at DT Shiva _ on Twitter. You won't miss the notifications when the registration rolls around next Feb.
Absolutely. No, good fun. Certainly, not regretting joining that community. It's something I'll be playing for many years to come, I think. So it's amazing, good fun. Our league's just great as well. Like, we got a league group chat and stuff like that. And
you're the musical group, right?
Yeah,
Siegs is actually in your league.
The 2 finalists of the song contest in the same league. So
that's brilliant.
But anyway, we'll get stuck into the show. First, I better thank Game Day Squad for supporting the podcast. Each week we give away a Game Day Squad pack on our podcast. There's a link in the description below if you haven't filled it out before. Click on it, put your team name in, and then if your team name is pulled on the wheel, just get in contact with me and I'll send you a free pack. So spinning the wheel right now, let's see who comes up this week. And the winner is... Trags' team wins this week. Trags' team. If you're Trags' team, send me an email. You can touch me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, X, whatever they call it these days. Whatever. Just let me know that's your team. Confirm your email address with me and I will send you the pack. But anyways, let's get stuck into the round review for the week. Starting off with the Friday night game, Geelong versus Collingwood. Geelong coming out victors in this game. Did that pretty much go how you expected, or?
I can't get a good read on Geelong. I mean, I think that a lot could be said about most of the teams from 3 to 14, but Collingwood seem to be slowing down as the year goes on. Their injuries have finally taken such a toll on them, but Geelong keep unearthing these kids.
Yeah.
You got Lawson Humphreys up here first, and exciting.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Like, I watched in his debut a couple weeks ago, like, I just looked at him and, like, you know, when they don't put up massive scores, be like, this guy's got the tools, you know, to be a fantasy scorer. Halfback flanker, awesome skills, kicks on both feet, which is pretty awesome as well. I reckon it could be a future gun. But yeah, his 104 points in the weekend was quite impressive.
Well, the fact that he's, 3 games in, averaging 83.6, I think I don't expect that to hold.
Yeah.
But, for a debutant, first 3 games, that's big signs.
Yeah, 100%. Like, if you look at the breakout tracker, again, only 3 games, but like when he gets to that 5-game mark, which is when I start to chart him on the chart, you'll see that he's probably ahead of most people in their first 5 games as well. So yeah, he should jump up to that top 10 list that I've got there up on the website there. So it should be pretty interesting to see. Another one, I guess, is like a young gun that's probably going to win the Rising Star, which is Ollie Dempsey. How'd you see his game?
He's been thoroughly impressive. For a kid that had that initial burst in the season and then maybe slowed down a little bit, I think that could only be expected. He's had a great couple of weeks. Just seems like a great foil, and with Tom Hawkins out of the team, is proving extraordinarily valuable in just their forward setup.
Yeah.
So, being that important cog within the Geelong forward line, I don't know. He floats between that 40 to 100 metres out.
Yeah.
Seems to gather a lot of ball in that space.
Yeah.
It's that half forward mark.
Yeah.
That, continue to add those +6s. It's really good score build.
Earlier on in the season, he was lining up on the wing quite a lot,
Yeah.
and that scared me. And I think that's probably when he had that dip in his scoring. But yeah, since he's gone back to that half forward line, just working his way up to the ground. If you're not going to have a midfielder forward, and you're not going to have a midfielder, and you're not going to have a halfback flanker, I think these guys that kind of push high, that half forward, they call it the connector role, I guess, is like the next best thing you can have in fantasy.
Because even in those games where Geelong may not be getting the entries into the forward line, he's still going to gather some of the people.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. So, and I guess I don't think it really, and that half forward line as well, it doesn't really matter too much like how Geelong go over the next few years as well, because they always find them like a way to work themselves in the game. It's not like, if Tom Hawkins, like if Geelong, suddenly start to struggle, like Tom Hawkins is just kind of like dropped off the map a little bit at the start. I know there's injuries and age and stuff like that, but yeah, it's like key forwards can go missing if the delivery is not there type thing, which there is some concern about the Geelong midfield, but I think just in that kind of connector role, they're always kind of involved in the play. So
Do players ever lose a couple of points for you when they look too similar to a teammate? Because him and Sam de Koning have the exact same hair. I know they play different ends of the field, but I always find that irritating.
Well, sometimes they can double up because you think it's the same player. So who knows?
When you get ready to count your point, oh no, that's the wrong one.
got a few caps to tip here. Tyson Stengel had 86 points. I just don't rely on him to score consistently. Jack Henry had 85 points. A really solid showing, but the old case theory, 10 marks in defence. Which is, guaranteed 60 points generally, but scored 85 points there. The other one is Jai Clark. So 74 points. He's been mostly on the wing lately, only the 4 CBAs, but yeah, the 74 points there. What's been interesting about him is there's been so many Geelong players this season that have had to work. Well, sorry, some of the younger ones, like Lawson Humphries, had to play a lot of VFL and play well in the VFL to get into the side, for example. Jai Clark's a player that they just chucked in and just kept persisting with. He doesn't seem to lose his spot. I think he's only been thrown back once or twice, but seems to come in straight away. They obviously rate him. What are your thoughts on his future?
I had huge raps on this guy as a junior and was really excited to see him within the unit, particularly as Geelong started to retire.
He was touted as a plug-in player for Joel Selwood.
Yeah,
straight in. Yeah.
And we just haven't seen the ceiling.
Yeah.
And it's been a while. As you said, that Geelong have given this guy plenty of opportunities this year, but we really hadn't seen a lot of him in seasons past. I don't know, whether he'll blossom into the fantasy prospect we hope he will be.
Yeah. I'm not sure either. I don't know. I think the good thing is there's not a lot coming through that Geelong midfield. So I think I guess they got Tanner Bruhn, he's not playing at the moment. He's injured at the moment. So he's got to come back in. But I guess we're seeing what Geelong's midfield has to offer at the moment, and while they're still winning, they're still aging. You know what I mean? So
that's it. Danger's not got long left in him,
and they're so reliant on him still, as well as their main kind of ball winner too. So whether I don't know if I see Jai Clark being that caliber of player, there's still going to be holes in the midfield to fill over the coming years. So that's probably the positive you got there.
Before we move on from Geelong, I just want to flag for coaches that the run that they've got in the fantasy finals.
Yep.
So in the next couple of weeks, I've got the Kangaroos and the Crows. But in the prelim and grand final weeks, if you are pushing right to that round 23, round 24, it's Saints and then Eagles.
Yeah.
So, if you can get these fringe players that have a decent ceiling, hopefully your tip of the cap is in the grand final.
I guess on the other side of that, Rucks that are playing against Sam DeConing at the moment are putting up monster scores. I think Darcy Cameron put up 147. I think Tim English plays him this week, and then I think Tristan Cherry plays in the week after that.
Yes.
So, when you're coming into finals and you've got these players, might even be worthy of putting a C on those type of players or a VC if you play the loophole game and stuff like that.
Bailey Williams in the grand final.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about him later because I've got an interesting theory about West Coast. But let's move on. Or let's not move on to the Hawthorn Fremantle game because it was just this really weird low scoring game. There's nothing to talk about. The only guys that scored well were the Too Good for the Podcast players anyway, and no one else really gave any signs. The only thing James Warple and Yago Mira, they're midfielders that are putting up the high 70s type thing. And my predicament lately has been I don't have enough my D5 and my F5 are pretty just averaging 70 on the dot type thing.
Oh, in deep leagues.
Yeah.
If you're getting 70 on the dot, that's good.
But my thing is I've got Carl Amon. I have to play my midfield at the moment because I don't have enough midfielders.
Yeah.
I've got Jai Caldwell playing in the midfield as well. So I've picked up James Warple this week quite cheap. I gave up Jacob Ryan for him.
Great.
So yeah, so obviously we only play 12 keepers. Warple and Jacob Ryan's a rookie in our league, so that means you get to keep him for extra years. So it goes on top of your keeper. So I gave up a potential keeper for next year for a guy I won't keep going into next year type thing.
But you need the scoring output.
Exactly. So that's left me to put Carl Amon back in my back line. And then Luke Parker, moving on to the next game, I guess. Luke Parker is now coming to midfield, so now I can put Jai Caldwell forward. So all of a sudden, I've pretty much gained an extra 18, 19, 20 points to my team per week type thing, which is pretty handy.
I think we're going to be coming into a lot of leagues where trading windows will shut. And this is going to be really dependent on the commissioners of those leagues keeping this pretty tight because there is no setting in AFL Fantasy to automatically shut that window.
Yeah.
So the commissioners are going to have to go through and shut that down. And, theoretically, it should be in the next fortnight that happens.
Yeah, ours is this week.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you are going to make those lineup changes, you've got to think about them now. And if you're contending, then really that's what you should be doing.
Yeah, definitely.
Powering up for that chance at the title.
So just on that, Warple and O'Meara, probably those kind of guys in that range that you can get a high 70s midfielder. If you're like me, where you're forced to pay your DPPs in your midfield because you can't find midfielders.
Yep.
Targeting guys like that now that aren't going to make other people's keepers is probably a good play.
Absolutely.
Moving on to that Sydney versus North Melbourne game. Straight into Luke Parker. 72 points in a half of football.
He topped the tackle numbers for Sydney.
He looked hungry.
Brilliant.
I actually watched the other game, the Hawthorn Fremantle game, disappointingly, because I own Luke Parker and had him on the bench, and I've had him all season. Obviously, he hasn't played a game for me. But just to see him, and I didn't even see he was the sub. I switched, looked at my phone and just saw, holy shit, Luke Parker's playing. Because he wasn't named, he was a laid in.
That's right.
Yeah. And man, I've gone back and watched a few highlights, and yeah, this guy looks to me like a player that never wants to miss out on selection ever again in this half of football.
He's had to wait for so long, and then the 6-week suspension in the VFL.
Yeah.
It's not been a great year for him or for owners, but surely he plays a full game this week. That's exciting to see what's to come.
Do you think he does, or is it one of those things where they go, you only played under the circumstances last week, we might give you another half game to ease you in, see if you can replicate it type thing?
I get the feeling that it probably accelerated whatever plan they were going to have.
Yeah.
So now that he's played a half, he's shown that he's up for the fight.
Yeah.
He on his own would clearly be advocating, play me a full game. I want in the 22.
Yeah.
And when you look at their lineup, I know it's stacked, but there are other candidates that could definitely be sitting in that subverse.
100%. See, I look at guys like Braden Campbell. I know they're kind of different types of player, but is he really in a premiership side, like a premiership player? You know what I mean? Even guys like Taylor Adams, I think Luke Parker can do exactly what Taylor Adams does.
Well, Taylor Adams, was a sub the previous
That's what
week.
I mean, yeah. So I can see and I just find it strange that even before he got suspended, there was those weeks where he was playing in the twos where he could have been doing similar type things. I feel like it's a bit of a horse play to really get the best out of Luke Parker. Yeah. And in the back end of this season, he's going to be wanting to guarantee he doesn't get dropped again. Plus there's that premiership carrot in front of him. I reckon he could be a really good waiver wire pickup for those who were smart enough to get on him or who can get him this week. I know he's going to be mid-only. A lot of people wanted him to be a forward by the end of the season because they were expecting that mid-forward role. But even as a midfielder, he could easily fill out your M6, M7 position and score pretty well for the rest of the year, I think.
And even though I haven't had a look at it, you would have to assume that the AFL's given Sydney some blockbuster fixtures.
Well, they've got Port in 2 weeks, so that won't be a blockbuster. But yeah, they might.
The less we say, the better.
You might be able to loophole a few of them there as well. The other one that's kind of tapered a little bit, Matthew Roberts. Just good to see him back with 89 points. Across that halfback role, I just have a little bit of a worry that it was more of a fantasy-friendly game. Like, we hadn't seen Jake Lloyd score well in the last few weeks. We're coming against North Melbourne, you know what I mean? So, I still have faith in him, but I might not just be getting as excited as I was at the start of the season yet.
What I find so fascinating about Roberts is that my assumption would have been, months ago, when Mills and when Parker come back, that's when his scoring will suffer the most. But that's his best game in a while, and both of those guys are in the team.
Yeah,
I mean, it just flies in the face of that a little bit. I don't think I don't think he'll have the capacity to keep it up with the amount of points that there are to go around that team.
Yeah, I agree. We'll tip of the cap to Papley and Logan McDonald. They kicked 4 goals each. I bet Logan McDonald wish he could have kicked one of those goals in the last minute dying stages of the last 2 games, but I think he'll take the 4-goal return regardless. The North Melbourne side of things, Cam Zerha, not really consistent enough, is he? 96 points. Is there any interest there?
If you had him and you played him, you'd be very pleased with that. Can't expect that on a week-to-week basis.
Absolutely not. Jai Simpkin, though, interesting. 88 points. Do you think he's back to that too good for the podcast range?
I hope so. I mean, so many... If you remember what a jet Jai Simpkin used to be, like, he's just been a shadow of himself until the last month. And then we saw a glimpse, and then he regressed again. I really do hope. He's got beautiful hair. He's great to watch. In terms of the Kangaroos playing good footy, they need Simpkin to be playing good footy. He's kind of been lost in the whole George Wardlaw and Harry Sheasel, like the youth that they've injected in there has kind of pushed him to the side, but he still is so important to that setup.
Yeah, 100%. I just think the role he's got at the moment, that mid-forward split, is just working for him.
Yeah.
And like when he showed the best signs of being a fantasy player, I think, well, it probably was that kind of stage where he was merging into a full-time midfielder. But the glimpses we saw early on in his career as a mid-forward, like that's when we kind of saw this guy could be a fantasy player.
Yeah.
And so like it might not be the ceiling that we maybe once expected from him, but still fairly serviceable as a mid-forward.
Considering where we've been, if he can average that 85 to
I think
90
he can too.
range, great.
Yeah, 100%. We'll move on to the Western Bulldogs versus Carlton game. Jamara Ugle-Hagan had 93 points, kicked 4 goals. Do you think he has a future in fantasy? Could he be one of those fantasy-friendly key forwards? What do you think?
Oh, people were... I mean, the commentary since that game on Saturday night have been comparing him to like Carey type performance, which, considering that he'd had a pretty lean month in the lead-up, is a lot.
Yeah.
But maybe he just functions better without the big bullocking forward in front of him. Like, it's not like he was playing against a bad defense.
Yeah.
He just looked up for the fight.
Yeah.
Like, if you can see the effort in him on a week-to-week basis, yes, he could be a fantasy pickup. But at this point in time, 40s and 50s are still in his horizon.
Would you say that's the same for Sam Darcy as well, who had 90 points?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, the key forwards, we just usually don't like them. They're great in keeper leagues and draft leagues. They are handy to own because they will pop week in, week out. And you will get even if you play them as like your F4s, your F5s, these kind of guys, like, they're not going to be every week, but like the same thing, like people got Dylan Moore in their side who pumps out like a 73 every now and like he did on the weekend. You know what I mean? Like it happens, and they will fluctuate, but you will get some good scores out of them as well.
The hard thing about those two in particular is that you just don't know when the Bulldogs in general are going to pop.
Yeah, that's true.
Port are consistently inconsistent. I think you can pretty much read when they're going to be good or when they're going to be bad. The Bulldogs are the opposite of that.
Yeah.
They will go against, convention most weeks. And so, we all thought that they were going to go down to Carlton, particularly when they lost Treloar before the match. Didn't happen.
Yeah.
And the forwards really stood up. So, we'll see what happens next week against Geelong.
Classic Dogs, and Bevo probably has a bit of factor in that as well from time to time. Looking at the Blues, who were largely disappointing. The only ones there, Wiedering, 97 points, took 11 marks. Tip of the cap, but I do like him as bench cover. Like, he's had 2 seasons where he's averaged 70 plus.
Yeah.
He's more than capable of those types of scores. So I don't dislike it. It's just not a player I'd love to start. That's
They
all.
do chip it around a little bit.
Yeah.
That's why Nick Newman's such a good fantasy
Correct,
player.
yeah. And the other one's Brody Kemp. He had his tri-weekly 75 plus score. Always seems to pop up with a decent score every second or third week. So
Yeah.
I do like Kemp, but he's similar mold to Wiedering as well. On to the Melbourne versus Essendon blockbuster, which kind of ended up being anything but, given the rain and the scoreline in the end. One guy I've got my eye on at the moment is Judd McVie. So 79 points. I think he's stepping up a bit since Rivers has just moved off that half-back line into that full-time mid. What are your thoughts?
It's funny. So I always tie him together mentally with Bailey Laurie.
Yeah.
They came through at a similar time.
Oh, there's one I get mixed up as well. It's not Bailey Laurie. Who's the other one? Come to me. Keep going. Oh,
And-
Kate Chandler. I always get them mixed up.
And I put my stocks in Bailey, and it seems like I've bet on the wrong horse out of the two of them, because Judd certainly seems like he's got the wheels now to really put this in motion on a consistent basis.
Yeah, he's just one to watch because like he's scoring very similarly to what Rivers was in that role as well, like that kind of 70s to mid 80s type thing.
Yeah.
Like I reckon he could do that for the rest of the season if like the roles continue, which I think they will. Very interesting thing about Melbourne as well. Tom Sparrow just is completely dropped out of the
I
centre.
hate Tom Sparrow so much.
It's so frustrating, isn't it? But it's like what's interesting, I guess, is Neil Bullen has gone in there as the tagger. Keziah Pickett's been gone in that kind of stoppage type player as well. Like those guys both listed as forwards, very, very handy to own this year.
Fucking Sparrow.
Sparrow's just doing
I
nothing.
hate him so much. Particularly given that, with Petrarca injured long term, the mentality behind it, everything says to me, okay, Sparrow now should have the window to be able to play a role which would be beneficial for fantasy scoring, and he just cannot get it together.
Yeah.
And even when he has an in-game burst, he will stop.
How much
every week.
How much of it is him, and then also what Simon Goodwin does to it as well? Like he doesn't. Do you think it's the fact that he doesn't take the opportunities when he's given them, or he just doesn't seem to get them like other people in favour? Yeah,
I just can't with him. Like I can't bring myself to drop him from any fantasy side because I figure he'll push the moment I do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
And particularly given he got forward status this year, I thought that would be his saving grace, but not so.
Yeah, not even. Yes, so I've got him in a league and I didn't even field him. We had the cup final in our league, in the Dynasty League.
Yeah.
Didn't even field him this week, and still won without him.
55 points, mate. Made the
Yeah,
right choice.
exactly. Yeah. Onto the Bombers, just a few players. Dylan Shield really hasn't missed a beat since coming back in.
surprising.
102 points. Put up a TikTok during the week. It was Aaron Bryans of the ABC on the show last week, basically saying like he doesn't think. And I think I kind of skewed it with the edit. And I apologize, Aaron. He said I don't really get how how Darcy Parish fits in the Essendon midfield, and I think he meant more so from a fantasy perspective.
Yes.
But I think the people out there that don't realize it's a fantasy podcast, which seems to be quite a few that jump on the old TikTok page, think it's just general footy chat. We're thinking like he thinks. Parish is going to be out of the side when he comes back in, and it's more about the midfield mix. How do you think the midfield mix is going to work with, you've got Merritt, who's obviously your number one guy in there. Caldwell's just having an unbelievable stretch. I think he's had 3 130 plus scores or 120 plus scores.
He's just having a year out of pocket. Then you got Durham, obviously, as
Durham
well. Who's
in there as
brilliant.
well. Then you got Shield there as well, and then Archie Perkins rotating through there. Like Archie Perkins is already suffering. Like I think he's only like scoring 60s and stuff at the moment.
Yep.
So like when Parish comes back in, like one of do you think it's going to be an even spread? Do you think someone's going to directly suffer? What's your thoughts?
It's going to be interesting to see where his fitness is at because
He's probably going to play twos for a bit.
Well, that's right. So the start of last week, he was quoted as 2 weeks.
Yeah, saw that.
So they're going to need to build him up. If Essendon are going to play finals, and I mean, I suppose that's up in the air at the moment, then they're probably going to need him. But again, where does he fit in? Because that midfield mix does seem good from a fantasy perspective. Obviously, they haven't seen those successful results as much over the last month. I don't know what Darcy provides in other roles on the field. Like, can he play a half-back role?
Yeah,
have we
Done
seen
that
him
before.
as an effective half-forward? Like, can he add to the scorecard? Or is Nick Martin better at that side of the field and maybe put Parrish back.
Well, the other one is, does Caldwell do some more forward stuff as well, which would be highly frustrating for owners. But he's probably the guy who's done it before as well. It's interesting. I feel like they're all going to... I think the best case scenario for those who don't own Dylan Shield is he just replaces Dylan Shield.
Yeah.
But I think Shield's playing well enough to stay in the side.
It's certainly, he's not taking a backward step since he came into the side. He's been one of the biggest surprises of the year for me.
Yeah.
Would have been sitting on so many waivers as a guy people just figured was washed up.
Yeah.
And that he's been in the hundreds a couple times.
My gut feel is he does go back a little bit from here. Like he doesn't average 100 from here on, but could still be that 80 guy. But I wouldn't be surprised if he does dip lower when Parrish comes back. I think they rotate it and spread it out a bit more, and I think he could go back a little bit.
Watch the Parrish injury with interest.
That's true. Sam Draper is the other one, listed as a forward, obviously, at the moment. Probably not going to keep that for next year, but 91 points on the weekend. And like he was suiting the number one role well, I thought, but then I kind of watched a bit more closely and it kind of makes sense in the way the game went. He wasn't really that effective given that Melbourne
Jacob
had a
Van
ruck.
Rooyen had the better side of the ledger.
And every tap he won. He just went forward every time, and I feel like they just rucked to his taps as well.
Yeah.
Like they were planning for him to win it, and it just wasn't effective. And I think, like, my thought initially was like, oh, well, Sam Draper's just going to be the number one ruck now. They've gone 2 weeks in a row without Goldstein, but I think someone like Goldstein's just going to offer them something a little bit smarter in there in terms of ruck craft and tap and stuff like that. So I really wouldn't be surprised if we see Goldstein back in the side at some stage and just kills Draper's scoring.
I know a lot of people think this. I don't think Sam Draper's that good.
Yeah, neither do I. I think it's more wishful thinking, given that he's got forward status, and as a number one ruck, you'd love to keep these 90s going each week.
It was a dream fantasy matchup from the perspective that, Max Gawn, one of the most dominant rucks we've seen in a decade, was out.
And they've got no replacement.
He's rucking against... Yeah, they literally didn't name their second ruck.
Yeah.
So we rucked against Petty and Van Rooyen, and, yes, put up the score, but... in terms of game effectiveness, didn't work.
Yeah, nah. So
wet as well.
Yeah, I personally just think the Sam Draper forward play, that bubble's going to burst eventually, I think. First of all, the gold members read for tonight. Thank you to Sam Harris, Callum Ryan, Sam Ewie, Kane Ryan, Tom Dickman, Mitchell Bennett, Ian Matthew, Andrew Hubbard, George Donatzis, Josh Healy, Mark Barber, Imran Church, Gavin Thompson, Joshua Cobb Diamond, Jay Langloy, and Callum Harkins. Any Shiva names in there? Any of you recognise? There usually a few.
When I've got
put you on the spot,
780 people.
Yeah, it's a bit harder.
Not off the top of the dome.
Yeah, no, not the ones that are active on the socials anyway.
I just enjoy you trying to figure out the pronunciation of each name. As you go through.
This one's actually not too bad, but it's had some shockers. Thanks to those who do support the podcast. Again, this is a member supported podcast, and are having kind of a good consistent run of just people signing up to support the show during the season, which doesn't really happen. A lot of people would sign up to get like the resources and stuff in the pre-season, stuff like that, but have noticed a lot of people just signing up to support the podcast. It's plainly obvious when you sign up with only 3 or 4 weeks to go of
that's great.
So people are supporting the podcast, so it's great to hear.
There.
Absolutely. And that, the members keep this going to the future, so thank you for that. We'll keep going. The Adelaide St Kilda game, I only watched the last probably 10 minutes of this.
I didn't see a lot of this either.
But Ben Keys, we talked about him last week as just like, and like, because we've had him on the show before, chatted to him, kind of know what he's about. We do think he's like a very, very hard worker. And he's the kind of player you'll stick in any position or whatever, and he will do his best thing for the team. But he's had 110 points, and I don't know I don't know how many goals he kicked in this game, but he's basically 1 point off too good for the podcast because he got a 79. If he would have had the 3 80s in a row, that's auto qualification. So I guess we're putting it out to the jury here. Is he too good for the podcast again? I think he had a lot of tackles this week, and that was his way to score. But
he had a big last quarter.
Yeah.
He had such a flat zone through the year.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I'd be dining out in that 110 points. It's only his second 100 of the year.
Yeah. What's he averaging now? Is it close to 80? I think it's high 70s, isn't it?
72.4.
72, low 70s. But yeah, that's I don't know. That's where Archie Perkins is at for me.
He's not too good for the podcast. Yeah, no. It was a tip of the cap week.
And a good like 3 weeks stretch. That's the thing. So if he does it again next week, he's going to be firmly in the conversation.
Yeah.
Zach Taylor, 86 points. Again, didn't see much of this game and don't know a heap about him other than that he's a bit of a good mix of inside-outside type player, and he was scoring okay in the sample up into this selection. 5 C-bags in this game, so I assume he was kind of more on the wing, but I've always said there's a wing role open at the Crows at the moment. They've rotated quite a few guys through there. It might be even just someone like Mitch Hinge out kind of benefiting from that as well, like rolling up more.
He seems to play a bit more half forward, to Hinge's half back.
Yeah. Probably more on the wing, really. But it's more like, does Nankervis just then sit on the back line and he goes up type thing as well. I don't know. Didn't see much of the game, but the score was impressive and I'm pretty keen to watch again on Friday night.
It looks like he's peppering the goals quite a little, and without actually kicking them.
Yeah.
So the score profile is good.
Yeah.
I think he looks like an exciting player. I mean, the Crows are in this position where they need to blood these kind of guys.
Yeah.
And just see what they're about.
I think Kays is a fan of him as well. He's pretty excited when he got his debut as well. So he's the state league monitor there. So it's probably good signs. Sam Berry, only that 83 points, but he's been pretty good since coming back in. Like he's, your last, probably your M6, M7 type of guy that I think could be a 80, 90 average guy when he's in full flight eventually. Probably closer to the 80s given the role that he plays. He builds his scores through tackling more so than possessions. But I don't hate these kind of guys. What are your thoughts?
My biggest concern about guys like Sam Berry is the sub-vest risk.
Yeah.
If Crows are playing after lockout, then, he's a huge concern in terms of fielding for mine. He's played that role quite a lot this year. And so, when you see that that happening to a particular player, I don't know, it just throws up the red flag for me. Cannot be trusted because if he's going to do that, not come onto the fourth quarter and get you 30, that's a killer. I
think since Crouch is out, it's probably better for him. And I think the Crows need to just start mixing up that midfield. Like, what's led now? 32, 31, 32 type thing.
They'll keep playing him in there.
Well, he's the type who could easily just go back to the halfback flank as well.
And I know every Crows fan that listens to this will think, yes, please. Because he's an absolute burner of the ball. He needs to be out of the midfield. They'll keep playing him in the midfield. Yeah, I
know, it's frustrating, but hopefully they don't. Anyway, I think Sam Berry is just a little bit safe with Crouch out. Hopefully he just does enough to win the trust of the coaches and all that sort of stuff this year to be a main fixture.
Yep.
And then I reckon once he is a main fixture, you can rely on him for like that 80 type average as well, which is more than handy. In our league, he'd only be picked up in the draft because we're going to keep 12. Probably not quite keepable as a mid. Be close. But he'd be one of those kind of top-up players you get each year. That'd be pretty handy, I think. Similar to Xavier Dersmar I've picked up this year. I've been so happy with him. And I think he could score, different type of players, but can score similarly.
But that low average 80.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, very valuable in deeper leagues. Billy Dowling, 80 points as well.
I'm excited.
Look, I only watched the last 10, 15 minutes, but looked to be like further up the ground than the forward line. Like he got a few touches through in the middle, maybe even half back. I don't really know because it's hard to see where he didn't get any CBAs, but I didn't see where he started for most of the game. But I don't know. He's just got this vibe about him that makes him kind of look like a fantasy scorer, don't you think?
It seems to play in bursts. Like he will disappear for 30 minutes at game time, and you think, is he out there? But and then he's got the capacity to score 20 to 25 points in a very short amount of time.
Yeah,
just get his hands on the pill a little bit. Obviously, his numbers have always been really enticing from a keeper perspective. I think he's got it. Like, I really hope he can really carve out a career at the Crows.
The thing is, like, you look at the state league scoring as well, and he's the one consistent guy, like one of the consistent guys down there. They do fluctuate quite a bit, the midfielders at state league level, but especially when you look at the sample and the waffle, VFL is a bit different. Everyone seems to put up monster scores in the VFL. But yeah, like Billy Dowling's one of the more consistent guys at that level, and I think given his age, given the type of player he is, I think that bodes well for the future of his fantasy scoring.
So he had 80 points this week, 45 points in the last quarter.
And 100 in Supercoach as well. So
he really came home with the wet.
Yeah. So
in the wet.
Yeah, definitely. The other one is the Pooh. Matthias Philippou. 93 points in the weekend. He just continued on from last week. He's been reintroduced into the midfield, and he's actually kind of, apart from the fact that they keep losing still, they won last week, But it's been a win for Ross Lyon, like to send him back to the twos, bring him back in, play him in the midfield. It looks good for him. It looks good for fantasy coaches. Do you think the role continues going forward?
Yeah, I hope so. He just looked hungry, and that was all the reason that Ross Lyon needed to sit him for such a long period of time. It kind of went against the logic of having this rebuilding that the Saints are going through, and then not playing kids like Philippou. But he's been really, really impressive.
I need to just check these. Last week we kind of noted that there was a tight 4 rotation into the midfield. Now they did reintroduce Zach Jones, I think, this week, but the Hunter Clark, Matthias Philippou, Jack Steele, and Jack Sinclair were the top 4 again, but with a bit less of a split. But let me just have a look here. Matthias Philippou actually increased his centre bounce attendance percentage from last week. I think it was Jack Steele and who was the other one that went down? Rowan Marshall went down weirdly, so they must have just run someone else there. But yeah, Jack Steele got 100% last week, so that was always never going to be consistent. Yeah. So yeah, I think Philippou, it's a good sign that his CBAs went up again this week, so could be could go well for the future, I think, as well. But I reckon listed as a forward, it's a no-brainer. If he's on your waiver wire, you got to get him. He's probably already gone though.
Hopefully, just needs the consistent game time for the rest of the year, and hopefully Ross will give it to him now.
Definitely. Onto the Gold Coast Suns versus Port Adelaide. Any shock with the result here for you?
No, none.
Neither.
The only weird part of it was the fact that Gold Coast have been Port's bunnies for such a long time. Like I've got a 12-year-old at home.
Yeah.
And
the whole time he's been born.
That's right. In his entire lifetime, the Suns hadn't beaten Port.
Yeah.
It's 2011 since that very first game they ever won.
I was there.
I was in Bali watching it in a pool, and everyone was cheering for Gold Coast, and I just slinked off into the corner. No, I don't know. Port are just so middle of the road.
I got a good theory. I'm going to send this on to Ken Hinkley. He played 4 talls, but with his bombing on the head game plan, I think he needs to play 6 talls in the forward line. We might take a mark inside 50.
They all just have to stand.
No, they all compete against each other like they do now. They all crash into each other and hurt each other.
I'm not sure. Yeah, if you watched the game yesterday, watch the contest where Aaliyah hit the contest. So it was going to give away a free kick anyway, front on, backed into it, and managed to take out 2 of his own players and nearly injured Miles Bergman. It just defies belief.
Yeah, I guess that's probably a bit different in defence, but the forward entries are just, I don't know what's the plan.
Jack Horns.
Yeah, 100%. Get bigger and muscle people. That's probably it. Alex Davies is the first one I want to talk about. So he's probably going to get rubbed out.
He will
pretty
get
unluckily as well on Lockie Jones. I think it's that thing, like you play VFL for so long, you kind of just lose the pace of the game. You try to crash in and do the right thing and win the footy for your team, and then you end up knocking someone out.
And he gets this opportunity because Took Miller's obviously broken his wrist, and so he's looking at this 4-week period thinking I can really make an impact. Yeah, but he's going to miss that entire period now. Yeah,
it's really disappointing for him because he is listed. Is he listed as a forward? I think maybe not. He would have had a 4-week stretch where he could have really shown himself. He's shown when he gets a midfield role in the past. Yeah, he's actually listed as a forward. I've got it here in front of me. When he gets a role, he can score, and it's just so disappointing. I guess the thing is who's going to come in for him now? So now you're playing Raul Anderson and Flanders.
I don't think Will Graham played yesterday, so I think he's probably the closest to plug in.
If I was playing the waivers, I would just throw a sneaky one at Braden Fiorini. He's been absolutely... he's been playing the inside role in the VFL because he plays outside at AFL level. Been playing that inside role at VFL level and putting up some absolute monster scores 3 weeks now. He always does, but he's can play that role. And I can probably play it as well as Alex Davies does.
Yeah.
The other one is Ned Moyle, 85 points. I think owners will be hoping Witt stays out, but I just don't think that's the case.
Moyle's been good.
Yeah. A future Brownlow medalist, according to Aaron Bryan. So
it's. I heard the discussion about Ethan Reid potentially not being the ruck that people thought it would be, and playing off the half back line, but it's. You really hope Moyle gets a run because he looks like he's got all the tools.
Oh, he signed the contract, so there's no doubt he's the ruck of the future. It's just what Gold Coast do when they're trying to make finals for the first time. You know, that's the thing. Onto the Port side of things, Aaliyah, 104 points. He's had a slight uptick with Asava out, but he's not really a player I'd want to field. Maybe stream if Port have a few early games, but that's probably about it.
If you've got rolling lockout, use that emergency on him.
That sort of stuff. Travis Boak, 108 points. He's pretty up and down, but he was one of Port's better players in this game. He got traded to the premiership favourite in our league recently for a packet of chips, essentially. I think it was like draft pick 6 or something like that. Sorry, round 6 in our league. But I think Boak is like the type of player that you do chase if you are gunning for a flag. And I think in that team he's just depth. But if one of your forwards gets injured, he's a forward capable of putting up 108 points. Yeah.
I have had so many forwards in so many leagues this year that are so middling and just struggle to put up 3 figures once in the entire season. So the fact that Boak's done it quite a few times, that's incredibly valuable.
He'll probably score 50 next week, but
a lot of forwards will.
Actually, playing Richmond, maybe not.
Yeah.
Could do it again. But then he's got Sydney, so then he probably won't.
I don't know. A lot of forwards will score 50. So if I know that I've got one that has a capable ceiling, no matter how old Boak is, then it's still valuable.
Just a few other interesting ones, and these guys listed as forwards as well. Like Francis Evans and Quinton Narkle just played further up the ground this week. I think both got a few wing attendances as well. So, I think maybe just after Jones got knocked out, there was a few bit of a reshuffling where players went and stuff like that. So, just interesting one there. The other one though is Logan Evans.
Love him.
he's been pretty awesome.
Redhead
off the halfback flank. He plays such a fantasy friendly game, and now he's actually on the Too Good for the Podcast bubble with the 2
unbelievable
80 plus in a row. And I think he's had one other good score in there as well. Only the one low one. So again, he's just one to watch. We'll probably talk about it more next week if he does hit that.
I think he slots in very well. I mean, Port have traditionally had a lot of like halfback flankers.
Yeah.
But a lot of them have found new roles in the team. Like Darcy Ben Jones now plays that predominantly forward pocket role. I think he's really carving out a spot for him as a regular in that team.
And I think he's just a coach favourite straight away as well, which pretty helps.
Lockie Jones is going to be out with HIO protocols this week. I think Logan's going nowhere.
Nah, he's in there for a long term. So those who got him in Classic, I'd be pretty happy. Mid-season, like if you play no waivers like us, he's just going to be sitting there for drafts next year, and he probably go pretty early as well. So interesting one to think about. Apparently, it was meant to be a first-round draft pick or thereabouts, but just one of those ones that didn't get picked and slid.
Went to the Maggies.
But it was kind of good that he's come back. Onto the Richmond GWS game. So Jack Graham's an interesting one. 87 points playing that tagging role, listed as a forward. Any interest? You've got to have it, surely, if there's a forward. But it's the trust factor, right?
Any time I've gone anywhere near fielding Jack Graham this year, he's done something disgusting. And just, I don't know. He's got a black mark against him for me.
Yeah, I'm the same.
I just can't, some players you just can't entertain it with. Jack Graham is one of them.
Yeah, if you've got him on your list, you're probably going to chuck him on and hope for the best. But he's not someone I'd really go after. I literally, just before you got here, offered him up in a league. Would you like him? And I'm just like, I'm good. Like,
they didn't propose a trade to you?
Nah, just like, these are the players I can offer you to help you. My team's quite close, I think, to winning a flag.
Yeah, if someone dangled Jack Graham, unless I can get him for, as you said, a bag of chips like he got Boak. No thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Toby Bedford, again, probably will get rubbed out as well, but he's been pretty good since moving to the midfield as a tagger.
Yeah.
94 points there. You're going to miss him for a few weeks, but could be a handy option there if you need that forward. And Jay Riccardi's 87 points. He's just been a little bit more reliable now. He's playing that kind of backup ruck role for the last few weeks, just giving him a bit better access to points there.
And again, a name that you'll find on a lot of waivers.
Yeah, 100%. Connor Iden had 86 points, but this flies in the face of what we've been talking about. So we're like, what's the reasoning for the uptick in scoring? Was it Leclerc coming to the side, freeing him up? Or was it him giving more responsibility, more in the play because Sam Taylor's been out as well? So Leclerc got dropped this week, and we kind of come to the conclusion it must be Leclerc. Like, he's the one who's freed him up. Leclerc got dropped. He still scored 86 points. So, Connor Iden is technically too good for the podcast now.
I find that so hard to believe.
380 plus scores, 386 scores, 380 scores in a row. Yeah, incredible.
He'll be back soon.
Yeah, I think so as well. But Lee, I'd love to see what happens just with the team makeup in that back line as well. On to the final game of the round, West Coast versus Brisbane Lions. Liam Ryan with 108 points. We could say there's throw a blanket over these midfielders, forwards that are getting a little bit of midfield time. But do you think Liam Ryan's the same?
again, it's just another one that I don't think I'll be able to put any trust in. But he's. I mean, at his best, he looks zippy and mobile.
Yeah.
At his worst, he seems like, completely disinterested in the game.
I guess the thing is, and I got a few theories with this game with Jared Schofield coming in as his kind of first game. So like, Liam Ryan was in the midfield a little bit a few weeks ago, but then Harley Reid came back from his suspension and kind of pushed him out. But so we saw glimpses of him in there. As soon as Schofield comes in, puts him back in there. So could be one to think about over the next few weeks. The next guy as well, Zane True. Like, I thought this guy was dead
he come from?
and buried. And, it's a weird one because it's not like his form hasn't been bad in the waffle, averaging 100 back there. So you think, like, if they wanted to play him, they would have played him. But obviously, Simpson probably didn't rate him. Jared Schofield comes in, chucks him straight in, like out of nowhere.
Did he get delisted
scores 94 points.
Rookie?
Brings a bell, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, he seems like he's been on the edge of that entire squad for such a long time.
Yeah. So long.
Again, a guy who had great junior numbers.
And consistently good waffle numbers.
And, fantasy coaches or, keeper league coaches who are like into the depths of things really kind of had this guy on a little bit of a pedestal.
Yep.
And has just never done a thing.
Yeah.
So for him to put up 93 points, ain't true.
Yeah. So he just could be a coach favourite, or like Jared Schofield was a pretty tough guy. This guy's kind of like an inside mid when he's going as well.
Yeah.
And I reckon he's picked up more tats since the last time he's played as well. But anyway, and Jared Schofield does have a sleeve, I think.
Yeah.
So maybe there's something there. But new coach, few things to watch. The other thing was Bailey Williams had 94 points, 33 hitouts, but McInerney, had 43 hitouts as well. And I think there was like some backup Ruxton as well. So high stoppage here. Yeah. So someone like Bailey Williams could put up some decent scores if that's the case. And then I'd also be looking at rucks against them as well.
He's got a big couple of weeks coming up in terms of fantasy ruck play.
Yeah.
So Roll Marshall and then Jackson and Darcy if he's back.
So like Roll Marshall in particular, and I'm not sure if Cherry plays them, but those rucks that take it out of the ruck a lot, there's going to be lots of opportunities for those guys to do that against West Coast if this is a feature of the game plan. Like, it could just be a one-off, it could just be coincidental.
Yeah.
But if it is a high stoppage type of play that Schofield's going to run with, that could just be more points for the rucks that play them as well.
Very interesting for Williams.
Yeah, something to think about there as well. Cam Rain had 85 points. This guy always looks so good. Is this anything to get excited about?
No, it's not.
Nah, let's move on.
Definitely not. Him and Zach Bailey, even Jared Berry, throw them all together.
I feel like once every 4 weeks we just raise these guys and they disappoint next week and we just don't talk about them for a while.
They're never too good for the pod.
Nah, never, ever. That's the end of the round review. We'll get on to the questions to finish off the show in a second, but we'll just thank the next lot of gold members. I'm almost getting to the bottom of the list, so it's good.
There's one real good one in here that I'm just looking forward to see what you do with it.
All right. Alex Streckbine is the first one. Xavier Sisternino. I'm going to go with that. Jonathan Woods. Jeremy Pyrus.
Yeah.
Sorry, I saw the I as an L. Real tricky one here. Ben M. got that one. Mitch Sivior. Thomas Plunkett. Sam Button. Andrew Simmons.
Here we go.
Corrine O'Brien.
What's with all the symbols?
That's the HTML code for the apostrophe. Sorry, left that in there. Isaac Ronan, Sam Muggleton, Ryan Ellis, Tyler Walters, and Jake Rollins. Funnily, HTML, they do that because apostrophes indicate text. And so technically that would close the text at the apostrophe, so that's why it appears differently.
Week's Coding with Hef.
Yes, I've learned that through the footy numbers journey. But anyway, we forgot to mention footy numbers. Play that, please. Keep playing it. Let's get into
what a boon.
Tyler Waters. I was about to say Ryan Ellis, Tyler Waters, Jack Rawlings. Hopefully, I said you all there. Let's get into the questions and we'll finish off this show. Geordie wants to know: Mills 36% forward. We all thought he might come in and have that halfback role. Do you see him playing the wing forward role for the rest of the year?
I think Horse is probably still just going to experiment with it over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
We could even see someone like a Goulden moving out of that centre square a little bit more and him playing out, Mills coming in. I think it'll depend a lot on the fitness of these guys as well.
Big one is McInerney getting injured.
Yeah.
Like, I could see him just coming and just being McInerney now. You know what I mean? Like, wing, few CBAs here and there, forward rotation. Probably not enough to won't get DPP this year and, won't get it next year type thing as well. So maybe, but I think it's probably going to be more midfield than anything with maybe a rest somewhere if that rest is forward, I just feel like when you've got your first game back, you're more likely to rest forward because defending, you're constantly running, constantly chasing someone. You can rest a bit more up forward if it's your first game.
The biggest interest is going to be whether he can maintain that 35% and then get that forward status for coaches going into next year.
Yeah. And again, that's also, I think the only way you can tell that is, I think that's 36% forward on the app where it measures your segments. Also goes by where you start at the centre bounces and stuff like that. So it's a bit trickier as well.
Follow those CBAs, Geordie.
Yeah. At Ben Nickel 17, Tom Stewart, is he on track for dual position next year, or is it just the CBAs he's getting and playing predominantly half back? He's definitely going to be a defender because he's only got 15% CBAs at the moment, and I don't really think he's been starting that much anywhere else, apart from the bench maybe. But yeah, might be able to get up to that 35% as mid, but he's only a few games to go, and like, I don't know what they're doing with their midfield mix at the moment. Whether they keep him there for the rest of the season, they might put him back in defence as well.
It just seems like Scott is just trying to help him shake the tag.
Yeah.
And it's been really effective over the last couple of weeks with Geelong's uptick in form.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, if he's a DPP, it'll be add mid, and does that really add much in terms of the flexibility into your side anyway?
Yeah, like, well, it does for me because I've got no mids, but that's hence why I'm playing Caldwell and Amon in there. Not anymore. But anyway, P-Rex wants to know, is the poo thing real or just flash in the pan?
What do you reckon?
Real.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he's recruited as a midfielder, gun junior fantasy scorer as a midfielder.
He will be a great long-term player.
Yeah, needs to be there. He also wants to know, he also asked last week, who do you think the best buy low candidates are? And I just didn't read 4 contending teams in there.
Yep.
So I listed off a heap of guys buy low for next year, but that doesn't really help him.
So you want scorers that are predominantly at the end of their career.
Well, that's what I think. Like, I think he probably wants more so like guys that are underperforming that you might be able to get cheaper. But most coaches, if you're in a good league, are smarter for that. Like, I think the real value is those guys that are going to retire in the next 2 or 3 years, or guys that want to move off them because they're pretty injury prone as well.
Yeah,
so,
P-Rex, what you want to do is not necessarily target a this year retiree, but maybe someone you can squeeze one more year out of.
Yeah.
Pendlebury, for instance, and I know that's really good. Pendlebury's talked about playing another year.
Yeah.
You know, he can score you an 80.
Yeah.
A coach could be convinced that he is at the end.
Yeah.
Maybe you can get him cheaper because otherwise you say to that coach, well, what are you going to do? Keep him and have him retire on you, then you get nothing for him.
Yeah. Like, I don't mind picking up a guy who's going to retire next year. So, like, Sidebottom potentially, Travis Boak potentially. Like, if you get them for dirt cheap, or like, you know, a draft pick for next year that's not going to cost you much. Like, coaches will get any value they can out of players that are going to retire. You know what I mean? So, and even if it's minimal, like in a dynasty league, you could even get like a 4th rounder, 5th rounder type thing for these players.
And for that coach that's not going to make finals, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, and that's the other factor. They've got to not be, you know, a player for their side coming into finals and what's that. So it depends on the circumstance of your league. A guy I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Like, I just feel like Collingwood are lacking in their midfield a little bit, and I think they're kind of missing someone like Tom Mitchell. And I know he's probably going to. I think he's still probably 2 weeks away.
Does
still
the body
that
hold up?
Still that risk. Still the body. But I think they'll throw everything to making finals again, because you don't want to be that team that wins the flag and then doesn't make finals the next year. So I reckon if he can get himself right, he'll still be a sub risk, but also the potential to be like an 80 plus as your M7 type thing.
Just look at the scoring he had during the final series last year, and it was, you know, vintage Tom Mitchell.
Yeah, and if
It's
they
still
can,
within him.
if they can get back to finals contention, they'll give everything. You know what I mean? So that and they'll have genuine belief that they can do it again from wherever they finish. So he's a player that, like, given his former pedigree, I know he hasn't been himself, but I still think he could be. If you could get him for like an M7 price range, like, it's a good deal, I think, and to hold on to. The other one's Dion Prestia. No one wants him.
I couldn't.
You could get him so cheap. You could get it, like, no one wants him. Like,
He's already had his good score before he gets injured again. He's already had it.
I reckon, like, you could get him with the last pick in the draft, probably.
The problem is, like, if he does one more Dion Prestia type injury, he's done for the year.
100%. Like, he's like such that risk. But that's hence the reason why I think anyone who owns him would want to sell him for dirt cheap and take whatever they can get.
Like, I mean, let's say you make finals.
My thing is
fielding Dion Prestia because he is the player to do a half injury in the first 20 minutes and stuff you completely.
It's more like that loophole type guy. Even though Richmond aren't going to... If they play like a Saturday afternoon, it's more that kind of range. But again, like, guys that like are at their bargain basement that can still score 80s, like pretty easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand the logic. It would just make me sick if I was relying on him to do something for the final.
Ed Gordon 24. Who are your best projected rest of season rostered around or under 30%? Got a little list for you. So the guys that are still under 30%, Lawson Humphries still under 30%. Right. Probably the last week of that. Toby Bedford will probably miss a week or two, but he's one that's there that I don't mind. Philippou, I don't know how he's still under 30%, but this will be the last week of that. And then I got Sam Berry, Logan Evans, Judd McVie, Sean Manor. I reckon these guys are probably your best scorers for the rest of the year that are under 30% owned in all leagues.
It's a good list.
Guns N' Roses, last question before we wrap it up. For those of us who are out of finals contention, who are some buy low guys or waiver options for next year's? So these are guys I think just aren't currently getting a game. Ben Hobbs is one.
Just was hoping for so much more from him this year, but certainly, I mean, it has to be part of Essendon's future plans. He's got too much talent.
Correct. Josh Ward, I think, is one that I'm not willing to give up on just yet.
Yep.
Same with Mitch Owens as well. Too much talent
Cheeto,
there. Elijah Sardis, like still a young player, putting up huge scores each week in the VFL, so he's one that should come up. A bit of a forgotten guy, Angus Sheldrick.
Yeah, I
don't know how he gets a spot in Sydney's team.
Exactly. Like you'd be praying for a trade,
which could happen though. Like, you know, he might be. I think he might be a New South Wales boy actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, one to think about because he's shown a bit of pedigree, like especially underage stuff as well. I think Oliver Hollands will be class. Like, and even though he probably will be outside, he has had a few more CBAs and sort of
him
stuff.
And his brother just been out of form in the last couple of weeks.
And then Bailey Humphrey is another guy. I think he can be just a good forward option one day, I reckon as well.
I'm so glad Neil Erasmus is not on this list.
You're sick of hearing that name as a potential. I've given up.
He would be usually thrown in with this type of setup, but yeah, I think we've had it.
Yeah, 100%. Anyways, let's wrap it up for the week. Where can people find the DT Shiva? I know they can. It's probably too late to sign up, obviously.
No, but as I said, basically just kind of if you're interested in getting involved in this community where you don't have to have a group of 10 to 11 mates to set up your own league. We do it all for you.
You don't have to worry about that guy going at the end of the year, actually, I don't want to play anymore. Yeah, and then, you're left with 9 coaches instead of 10.
We are a ready-made community. There's money on the line. If you are just dipping your toe into draft footy and you want to just have a ready-made community around you, we are perfect for you. So there's
song contests. So even if you hate fantasy, but you love music, like you can still join up.
I'm not sure that would get you over the line, but dtshiva.com.au is the website where you can read all our rules and see how it all works. DT Shiva via Facebook, at DT Shiva _ on X, and plenty of other places as well. And of course, Spotify podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Shiva Blast, search for that.
And get around our stuff at Keep a League Pod on Facebook, X, YouTube, TikTok. I think that's everything. Probably one I'm missing, but anyway.
Footynumbers.com.
Footynumbers.com. Make sure you get around it. Sign up as a member to support the show. I've got some cool resource. I'm working on some new resources for the off season for the start.
I'm excited. I think this will be one of the biggest off seasons for fantasy football in a long time.
I think
get that feeling.
Yeah, so do I. There's a lot of things in the works out there, I feel, and a lot of new players coming along in the fantasy space in terms of content creation and all that sort of stuff as well. So yeah, going to be a very interesting off season. But yeah, working on some more resources. So if you sign up now, you'll have access to all that stuff over the off season as well.
Exciting times ahead. So, thanks for running the Hef Crash today.
Oh, no problems. Yes.
My 8-year-old has been sitting in the corner here at the podcast studio.
Yes, very, very well behaved. I kind of forgot they were even here.
Just learned a lot about fantasy football today.
I'm very interested in it as well, I'm sure. But anyway, we'll wrap it up for this week. Thank you for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon. See ya.